Gosh, for starters, pigs and humans share quite a bit of biology. Well,
what are we looking at in terms of from a consumer perspective? If I want to buy, good pork, what does it mean? What do I need to look for?
Now that I've seen your property, we could maybe get away with one pig and, letting it glean off of the other animals you have here.
Right. From a skincare perspective, what's so special about Lard?
And I come in and cover up with this stuff, and it blew my mind. I mean, I laid it on really thick, and in a matter of minutes, my skin literally ate it like it was.
It's because those animals are raised in a way that are how they're not supposed to be raised. They are sick, really. They're slaughtering sick animals at the end of the day, metabolically unhealthy animals, and you're eating them.
It's a marvel. I mean, the Cornish cross is a marvel.
You're listening to the Primal Shift podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kummer, and my goal is to help you achieve optimal health by bridging the gap between ancestral living and the demands of modern society. Get ready to unlock the transformative power of nature as the ultimate biohack, revolutionizing your health and reconnecting you with your primal self.
I'd like to thank Peluva for sponsoring this week's episode. Peluva is the brand behind my favorite zero-drop minimalist shoes with the distinctive 5-toe design that allows for correct dynamic movement of the foot when walking or running. The latter is impossible when toes are encased in a single box, even a white box. I love my Peluvas because they give me the most authentic barefoot style experience, but with sufficient cushioning to use them all day, even on hard surfaces. Peluvas are also incredibly stylish, and I really like how they look. I've been using my Peluvas during intense CrossFit workouts, while walking the dog, and even during a recent 8-day trip to Disney World, and they've been unbelievably comfortable. They feel like walking barefoot on a putting green. Now you can try a pair of Peluvas with no risk by visiting peluva.com. That's peluva.com. Make sure to use code KUMMER for 15% off your first pair. And now back to the episode. All right, Charles. Hey, thanks for making the time, and the trip down here to talk to me today about all things pigs, pork, and lard, right?
Pleasure to be here. Yes, I will talk pigs and lard anytime.
Very good. And what most people don't know, usually when we have an interview, people are somewhere in the world, usually in the US, but at least somewhere off site. Today you're actually right here in our home. Unfortunately, not right next to me because my setup doesn't allow it, but you're in the next room. So very exciting, and the first time I think I'm having this setup. So why would people care about lard? What's so special about lard? Both from a, nutritional perspective as well as from a skincare perspective, because you have a skincare company that makes products of lard, right?
That's true. And well, let me start by saying you have a beautiful home.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to talk you into getting some pigs in the backyard. So.
We'll definitely, in this backyard, I'm not sure. On the new property, I'll have you down to walk me through the process for sure.
Happy to do that. Excited for you guys and the potential there. That'll be great. So yeah, I mean, why pigs? Gosh, for starters, pigs and humans share quite a bit of biology. And so if you raise a healthy, happy pig, then I think their meat is quite nutritious for us. Their fat is certainly nutritious, both from a culinary cooking perspective, but also from a skincare perspective. I would say, lard is apparently the most similar exogenous substance on the planet to human sebum. Mm-hmm. And they're just fun animals. Again, it's one animal you don't have in your current farming setup, but they're gregarious, they're omnivores, so everything's a potential meal. So they've got a lot of curiosity about them. They're highly intelligent, mm-hmm. which I think is an asset for a domestic animal is intelligence, and so you can lean into that. And they're from an agricultural animal impact standpoint, they're willing to do things and in places that your typical herbivore ruminant animal is not capable of doing. And so in terms of
for example,
rooting, I mean, pigs are designed to dig with their noses. And so if you give them an environment and an opportunity to do that, they're gonna be happy to do it. And I call them 4-wheel drive rototillers. They will turn soil in a heartbeat, and so that's a very valuable asset. You've got chickens here, so chickens are another monogastric omnivore, and if you leave chickens anywhere for too long, you get a moonscape. The same thing it applies to pigs, and so you gotta move them around. You gotta feed them properly. We were talking before we got online about high or low PUFA diets and various things, and that's one of the aspects of a pig that is, I think, obviously unique, is in an industrial or even a scaled setting. You've got to feed them. We could, now that I've seen your property, we could maybe get away with one pig and letting it glean off of the other animals you have here.
Right.
But it would take that pig a very long time to build out and mature. So yeah.
So you mentioned before you currently don't raise pigs anymore, but you used to, right?
I did. So I had 3 jobs. My day job, I work in commercial insurance, and most of my focus, ironically, is in the food service, food manufacturing space. It's something I'm very passionate about, and so I bring that passion to the needs of a business that is trying to grow and has to protect itself. And most businesses require insurance, and so it allows me to be an asset and a resource for them. I was farming for about 7 years, and I had a very slightly scaled higher than what you have here, but not much higher. I had a real micro polyface model, is really, if you're familiar with polyface farms in Virginia. So I had a scaled down version of polyface. We were raising beef, pork, chicken. We did a batch of turkeys every fall, and was raising those for about, I think maybe at the height, I had about 45 or 50 customers spread out between Atlanta and Chattanooga and my hometown in Athens, Tennessee. And so did that for about 7 years, and had 1 year. We launched Farrow in January of 2022. And so that year was the only year where I farmed, I farrowed, and I day job, and it was like, man, something's got to give. And fortunately, one of the reasons that I launched the company was to highlight the benefits of raising a pastured pig. And so fortunately, there are other farmers in the Southeast that raise pigs at a standard for animals and the land that meets my personal criteria. And so I was able to offload the day-to-day of raising the animals myself. I miss them. Pigs are fantastic, and there's nothing quite as rewarding as consuming your own bacon.
Right.
But yeah, so I shut the farm down, started shutting it down, and sort of the last nail in the coffin in December of 2023.
Oh wow, it's recent.
December of 2022. We launched earlier that year, and so I look forward to farming again. It will come when I have the capacity to hire a few people to help me.
Yeah. That's really one of the things we've noticed, between, my wife is a, stay-at-home mom. She, homeschools the kids. And, I have a day job. I'm not a, homesteader or a farmer, by trade. It just doesn't pay the bills, but it's fun, but it takes a lot of time, and sometimes, priorities collide, between, having to, earn money and doing what I really like doing, being outside and building a new chicken tractor,
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful that Farrow gives me the opportunity to sort of meld those two things together, create a reasonable business around pastured pork and just raising, healthy, happy pigs. And so we'll see how it goes. But I tell people that one, because a lot of the interviews I end up doing are around regenerative agriculture and meat production. And I tell people it's not a lot of work every day, but it is work every single day. And so I applaud you and your wife for, for those that do raise animals every day away from the farm. There's an added layer of organization and reliance on other human beings to make sure everything stays in good shape.
That is true. What is the big difference in terms of, both from how are pigs raised traditionally in the conventional food system, and how, then I think that's one of the extremes, I guess the worst type of extreme, right? And then there is the regenerative way, and then there is probably something in the middle.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
What
are we looking at in terms of, from a consumer perspective? If I want to buy, good pork, what does it mean? What do I need to look for? And what are the difference from a animal welfare perspective, as well as from from our health perspective, by consuming the meat of an animal that might have not been, raised well? And I think you alluded to it, already, but, monogastric animals are slightly less forgiving because they literally are what they eat, much like humans. Right, in comparison to a cow, having cow on grain for the rest of for the last few months of its life is probably less of an issue from a nutritional perspective than a pig that was fed grains all life. Right?
Yeah, you and Anthony Gustin talked about this quite a bit. When was that interview? Maybe last year.
That was a couple of months ago, I think.
Yeah. Great interview, by the way. Yeah, that's one of the challenges. And from a skincare perspective, I think that's arguably the biggest reason why you see predominantly, we're the only lard game in town when it comes to skincare. Most of the other animal fat-based products use tallow, which I'm pro tallow. We use it in our products. I say the swine is divine, but the lard is hard. And so what we're talking about here is yes, how does a monogastric omnivore metabolize its environment and its food, right? I like to separate those two, even though they're part of the same puzzle. But I think one of the disingenuous aspects of sort of industrial food at large is we focus too much on the diet of an animal and too little on the environment of an animal. And so, so one of the challenges with monogastric omnivores, humans are monogastric omnivores as well, is one of the challenges is dietary and the other one is lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you have to provide, in my world, I say a pig, or a chicken for that matter, but a pig for sure deserves one bad day. And
right. And that's the last one.
That's right. And I got to tell you, Michael, so I'm giving a talk at Hack Your Health on sort of pigs and lard and, the history there. And it has been a real adventure for me in doing the research for this talk. So you brought up, what does historical pig raising look like? And I will tell you, even today, it is a far, far cry from what pig raising was even 200 years ago, right? And, interestingly enough, pigs, our earliest records of domestication look to be about 13,000 years ago. So we've had a relationship domestically with pigs for quite some time. But man, you rewind the clock just a handful of years ago, even near the founding of this country and even the pre and post first contact with Columbus. So pigs are not native to the Americas, which is kind of cool, right? So you've got North and South America really represent like a micro experiment in pig success. Earliest pigs were here in 1493. It was the second voyage, and then DeSoto later in the early 1500s dropped some pigs off in Tampa, Florida. What is Tampa today? But up until 150 years ago, there were no fences. Pigs just roam free. Now you trade them. again, this gets into the intelligence of a pig.
Right.
It's not a similar or dissimilar from our relationship with dogs.
Mm-hmm.
We have humans have a coevolutionary relationship with canine species that goes back a long time.
Yeah.
And so, if you lean into the intelligence of a pig, I would say the biggest difference today versus a couple hundred years ago is there are no fences. A couple hundred years ago, we weren't raising nearly as many pigs 200 years ago as we're raising today. A couple hundred years ago, we had no grocery stores, no gas stations, lots of things we didn't have. But I will tell you this, the pig has, from a food sourcing standpoint, has been a primary source of protein for humans for a very long time. And one of the reasons being, and you know this, it takes a couple years to fully mature, say, beef, a cow. You have to hunt deer and elk. Elk's a huge animal. Deer smaller. But when you decide to kill an animal, right, you have to be able to hang that animal up and eviscerate it and eat it, pre-refrigeration, which we've only had for about 120 years. Right. Pre-refrigeration, you had to salt and cure or consume that animal relatively quickly. Yeah. And so unless you killed it in the winter.
Right.
Most of the animals that we slaughtered if it's 1850, in the United States of America, from November through March, most of your animals were killed because you could hang them outside, right, and they wouldn't spoil. So it gave you some margin and some room to salt it or create the sausages and various things that have a longer shelf life. And so that's probably the biggest impact and difference between what we see today versus what you would have seen, 100 years ago. Right. Even.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so no fences really meant they could, find food anywhere. They probably had a much more diverse diet than being penned in, and only getting what we feed them, right?
Yep. Well, I mean, if you think about how a dog works today, if you live, you live in a rural area of Atlanta, but you've got, 5 or 6 acres here. Rewind the clock a couple hundred years.
It's actually 1 acre and a quarter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but let's just say you had your little farmstead, 100 years ago. So you might have a barn and you've probably got some fencing, but one of the primary uses pigs played in older agriculture is gleaning fields. So you've got your cornfield or your garden or various things, and you go through and you harvest. They go through and clean the field up. Mm-hmm. And of course, again, one of the advantages of having a monogastric omnivore is any scraps from the table, anything that's typically wasted in a familial, environment, or your family eats dinner and there's some food left over, you can, again, there's no refrigerator. We don't have Tupperware. It's like we don't want anything to go to waste. Breweries and distilleries, we've had alcohol in this country for a long time. And so pigs, because of the nature of their omnivorous upbringing, are able to you're able to leverage up. You're able to take what is a waste product and feed an animal that ultimately tastes really good and is also very curable. The fat, back to one of the magic things about pigs, is they have the ability to put on subcutaneous fat in a caloric situation. So if you've got enough food, you can fatten a pig up very quickly. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's
how long does it take from birth to slaughter for a pig? Yeah. If you raise it well.
Yep. Raise it well and feed it well. Again, if we dropped a pig on your property here, okay, so assuming you didn't farrow that pig, okay, so you've got gestation of a pig. So mama gets pregnant. It's 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. So that's gestation. The pig is born. It's farrowed. And so about 8 months, 7 to 9 months is generally the time it takes from birth to what I would call market weight. And so that's anywhere from 275 to 325 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier. A pig's going to reach meat maturity a lot faster than a cow, right?
Right.
And it's manageable. You know, a fully mature, ready to eat pig weighs 200 or 300 pounds. You know, cow's going to weigh 1,200, and so you know, in our homestead or in our small community, in our tight knit community, we can slaughter a pig and feed everybody and grind up the rest and cure it and hang it and all that fun stuff. You've got a lot more meat to deal with,
right?
Physically deal with, and as well as culinarily when you when you slaughter those larger animals.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. And that was one of the things why, you know, we're like, okay, if we slaughter our own, you know, cows at some point, you almost need, I mean, you need somewhere to hang them, right? Otherwise, it's going to be a pain in the butt to, you know, process the animal. And with a pig, I mean, yeah, it's also heavy, but it's significantly more manageable than a big ass cow or a, you know, bull or a steer or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, a side of beef's going to weigh 200 or 300 or 400 pounds. And just thinking, I mean, again, we're so far removed from our food. Even I contextually can't understand what dealing with a side of beef is like. But my God, it's several hundred pounds. You know, for anyone that lifts weights, like take a barbell, load it up to 225. And just try and carry that around on your shoulder for the afternoon. You can't do it. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a component of it. And, but yeah, the other aspect that has changed, I got to tell you, the pig industry. Just look at the last 100 years, right? Even 100 years ago, you had this major meat packing hub out of Chicago, but everything was outdoors. You know, as opposed to today, you know, the industrial pork industry has moved indoors. It's temperature controlled, you know, huge bars, similar with poultry. I'm not as big a fan of poultry, period, just because that's a relatively new phenomenon. I love chickens for eggs, but chickens for meat, I you know, this is back to your interview with Anthony. I agree with him. Now, you know, farm raised or pastured or industrial chicken still better than a box of Cheerios, right? Nutritionally, right? I'll sign up for that. But pork, my gosh, even 100 years ago, we didn't have GMOs. We didn't have microplastics. You know, if you think about all the ills of the human diet today, that is mirror that over to pigs. And so in the industrial setting, they're getting the lowest quality grain, genetically high PUFA, probably microplastics, you know, discarded candies. I mean, and they're feeding this stuff to cows too. So
really,
the diet, oh yeah, feedlots, it would blow your mind what rolls through a feedlot any given day.
From a skincare perspective, what's so special about lard? I mean, I get, you know, any type of, you know, animal fat can, you know, help on the skin, but what's so special about lard?
Well, so our skin wants to eat things. It's our largest organ. And so if you walk up to a buffet, okay, and in this skincare buffet line, we've got lard, we've got leaf lard. We can talk about leaf lard. So leaf lard, real quickly, is the tallow version of pig fat, which is visceral versus subcutaneous. So you got lard, you got leaf lard, you got tallow, you've got palm oil, coconut oil, olive oil, and then over and then next to that, you've got a lot of these seed oils.
Right.
And then next to that, you've got petroleum derivatives. So petrolatum and, the active ingredient or the primary ingredient in like Vaseline and these are all waste products from the petroleum industry. So you got this huge buffet of fats. Okay. Your skin is going to preferentially choose first and foremost animal fat. So kick all the petroleum, all the seed, and then even all the plant oils to the side for a minute. It's going to preferentially want animal fat.
Right.
And then beyond that, it's my contention that it's going to choose preferentially the fat from a monogastric omnivorous mammal because that most genetically resembles us. So, in terms of the lipids, in terms of the vitamins, natural vitamins and minerals, how they're stored, these are non-synthetics. I believe that our skin is going to most hungrily seek out lard. Now, again, tallow is not far off. Shares a lot, and like I said earlier, we use it in our products. Tallow is fantastic. It's interesting. See, lard was the first animal fat to be attacked, if you will, by big food, big pharma. Okay, so Crisco, which was introduced in 1911, which is cottonseed oil. Crisco was bleached white because at the turn of the century, if you fried or cooked anything, you were doing it in lard. And for your listeners that don't know, lard is white. Natural rendered lard and leaf lard are both white. Tallow, really at the turn of the century, was really more reserved for candle and soap making. And you're familiar, Michael, you're familiar with tallow. At room temperature, tallow is hard as a rock.
Yep.
Right? And candidly, I've spent a lot of time in the kitchen. I love to cook. I've got a couple of cookbooks to my name. If you've got to dig into a block of tallow to measure out a half a cup or a quarter cup of fat, you're not going to do it. Like you got to keep it over here on the stovetop melted, which, again, 200 years ago, especially if it was winter, you had a fire in your wood burning stove pretty much all the time.
Right.
But the reality is lard, because at room temperature, it is less viscous, more like a cream. It's scoopable. And so I believe that's one of the reasons why it was predominantly the fat that we most associated with cooking and frying, 100 years ago. And so Crisco comes out in 1911. That takes a lot of the wind out of the sails of lard, and then subsequently you have other things in history that really demonized saturated fat. You've got the Ansel Keys situation, Eisenhower, and so it's just been it's not surprising to me that I end up having conversations daily with people like, wait a minute, lard's good for us, and it's like it's absolutely necessary. I think it's a necessary fat, both culinarily and also skincare.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue anything, with bacon fat or lard or whatever, tastes better, regardless of what you cook. Even if you make, something like, Brussels sprouts. Nobody likes Brussels sprouts unless you add bacon, or bacon fat. Then suddenly it tastes good, but because of the bacon fat, not because of the Brussels sprouts.
I joke all the time. I've been fairly carnivorous now for the last couple of years. I'm really enjoying it. I've got a paleo background, and I think just eating real food, that's a really nice starting spot. Yeah. But I joke with people. I'm like, if you look at bread and if you look at some of the, like, it's even Brussels sprouts, it's really just the vessel to get the really tasty stuff in your mouth, right? It's that salt, that butter, that salt and fat. Those are the things we really crave. So, yeah.
So tell me about your skincare products. I've never cared much for any topical skincare products until a few months ago, where I got more into, dove more into the topic, and now I appreciate the benefits. I have a couple of tallow creams. What exactly do you do, and how did you develop your products, and why? What's the who's the audience? Who needs a tallow? Who needs a lard?
Well, we all need the lard in our lives. Who is our audience? Great question. Well, I mean, everyone has a skincare routine. For men, most men deny that because the skincare industry caters to most of the women. But you've got a big beard, I've got a mustache, but most men shave some part of their body at some point. Everyone takes a shower. Depending on where you are in the spectrum of sort of healthy living, you've got all these you've got these body sprays and scents and all that stuff. So we're constantly, sunscreens. Everyone's got some degree of a skincare routine. And, candidly, the skincare industry is just wrought with poor chemical ingredients that disrupt our hormones, and candidly dry our skin out.
Yeah.
And so, where does our product, well, first of all, our products, we have only a handful of products, 4 total. We have a skin food, we have a face food. I have a sublingual, which is, you think, put it in my mouth, that helps my skin. I have a sublingual elixir that helps lower inflammation, sort of works on skincare from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And then we have our most recent product, which I debuted at KetoCon Hack Your Health last year, is Epidermis, which is a similar lard-based product. It's in a portable, packable tube. Mm-hmm. So, it's just a little easier to go on to go with. But that's it. And, it's a question I get all the time, like, how do I use your products? And it's like, well, how do you use products now? Because our products can sort of fill in. And are you a morning skincare routine person? Are you an evening, maybe a little bit of both? I'll tell you what I use it for. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had razor burn in 3 years. So my morning routine, I get up. I didn't do it this morning because I'm on the road, but I'll get up and I'll shave for work.
I'm due too.
Yeah, you're due. You're due. Well, you've got some product. Did it get here yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I dropped it in the mail last week, so hopefully it will arrive. So.
All right.
But my morning routine is, I get up, I work out, my cold plunge, and then I go hop in the shower and get ready for the day. And after I shave, I put a pea size in my hand and just lather up my face with it. Haven't had razor burn in 3 years.
Interesting.
That's my routine. And a little ends up in my hair. And that's great. Now I've got 2 kids that are about your kid's age. If we get a scrape or a bump or a bite, we end up using it on almost anything. Mm-hmm. Anything where I'm about half convinced that itching's not from the bug bite or the poison ivy. Itching is from you have chronically dry skin, mm-hmm. and you've done something to stretch your skin out, right? You get a mosquito bite, there's a whelp, right? Uh-huh. Yeah. I believe that the itching is more because you have dry skin, mm-hmm. and it's, as the skin stretches, it's cracking. Mm-hmm. Think on a microscopic level.
Right.
And so, my poor kids, bless their heart, I've tested this stuff on just about every situation that's ever come across. But yeah, Michael, the best part about our products, and again, I'm pro animal fat products, but the best part is it's what's not in our creams. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of these chemicals, natural fragrances, mm-hmm. avoid that at all costs. And so everything in our creams is designed to do one thing, and that's feed and nourish your skin. Mm-hmm. How you choose to feed and nourish your skin, whether that's, again, I've taken a shower, I've washed it. A lot of women that wear makeup in the evenings, they wash off the day. Well, that's an ideal time to apply a little bit of our cream. Right. It's probably night before bed use is probably the number one recommendation I give people around our products, whether that's face or body, mm-hmm. because it is a full fat product. There's no water in there. There's nothing to evaporate. People associate a cream, I've applied a cream to my skin and a minute later my skin's dry.
Right.
And people think, oh, it's soaked in. No, that cream, again, look at the ingredients. That cream was probably 70 to 80% water. And you smeared it on and the water evaporated. All the active ingredients and, again, the seed oil or the petroleum derivatives, all of that's still sitting on the surface of your skin, dry, and will be absorbed over time. Our full fat product goes on the skin and it stays there for a minute. But if you give it 5 or 10 minutes, your skin comes along and eats it and it's gone. And that's the origin story of Farrow. So here you go. I had a really, really bad sunburn, like probably 2nd degree burn, like one of those epic life story sunburns. And I was raising pastured pork at the time and rendering some of the fat and playing around with making soap and cooking with it. I mentioned the culinary background, so I had a jar of lard, actually leaf lard, in my refrigerator that I was using to fry and, cook those Brussels sprouts that we all love so much. And so in an act of sort of curiosity and desperation, I come in from this you've been there. Everyone's been there, like not pink, like lobster red, really, really bad. And I come in and cover up with this stuff and, it blew my mind. I laid it on really thick and in a matter of minutes, my skin literally ate it. Like it was, you can imagine like greasing up really hard and then all of a sudden it's gone, which that was fantastic. I only put it on twice, in the evening when I got home and then the next morning before I went back to work. And so 2 applications. And you know this, Michael, when you get a bad sunburn, it's painful.
Yeah.
You're hot, but you also peel at some point. The sunburn goes away, but it's coming, right?
Right.
I have memories of like 2 and 3 weeks after a bad sunburn when I was a kid, and all of a sudden, like your whole body sheds. Yeah. I never peeled, and that was really what convinced me to dig a little deeper and understand. First and foremost, understand what's in skincare. Right? Again, you're in the health and fitness community, right? It's like, read your labels. Yeah. What are you putting in your mouth? And so I took that lens and applied it to skincare. And it's like, it's the same story. Like I can't pronounce half these ingredients and most of them are preservatives. And it's like, what's that for? Well, it's to keep the cream from, going rancid or going bad. And it's like, okay. Maybe I don't want that on my skin. Right. So that was the story. And we only have a handful of products. I think they work for, some, we're not the cheapest game in town with our products. So we handcraft everything. And again, raising pastured pork is raising a quality lard resource is harder than a quality tallow resource. Yeah. That's just, I'm not saying it's not important to raise beef, what's best for the land, what's best for the animal, all those things. And you can make a lot of mistakes or poor decisions when it comes to raising beef, and that's not going to manifest in the visceral fat of that animal. Yeah. It's technically not going to manifest in the visceral fat of a pig either. This hasn't been studied, so I'm not making any claims here, but one of the factors is the difference between visceral and subcutaneous fat, right? Lard, I mentioned earlier leaf lard and lard. We use both in our products, but lard is the subcutaneous fat. Leaf lard is the visceral fat from a pig. Visceral fat's biological function is not storage; it is protection. It's padding your organs, right? So even in a not necessarily good environment for that pig, right? Whether that's nutritionally or environmentally, or it's not going to preferentially store that toxicity in its visceral fat. It will be in its subcutaneous fat.
Gotcha. That's
right.
That has more impact on a bacon.
Correct. Bacon or sausage, right? And so I want to come back to a question you asked earlier, like what do we tell a consumer from a dietary standpoint? I tell them start off, if you have to buy pork or chicken, try not to get it at the store.
Right.
But even at the store, depending on the store, but like there's a brand out of North Carolina called Hickory Nut Gap. Okay. For your listeners that have access to Hickory Nut Gap sausage, it's what I feed my kids now and myself now that I'm not high integrity pork. Joyce Farms, White Oak Pastures, Polyface Farms. There's high integrity pork everywhere. You got to go looking for it. The website eatwild.com for any of your listeners. Like go to eatwild.com, go to your state. You'll be able to find those, and a handful of them are available in a typical grocery store setting, right? So that's what I tell folks is preferentially. I mean, you can again support your local farmers, but if you got to buy meat at the store, you're often safer doing ruminant meat. So beef, lamb. It's not like we don't sell a lot of goat meat at the store around here, but find your ruminant animal meat from the store.
Yeah. Well, that's good advice. And one of the reasons, we decided to raise our own chickens for meat because nothing of what I don't even want to buy a Cornish cross, for various reasons. Even if they're the best raised, pastured, what have you, but it's still a Cornish cross. The genetics already suck.
It's it's funny too. Like even digging into the history with. I love how these conversations always come back to really just like farming, right? But even digging into the history, the history of us eating fowl, period, is very different today than it was 100 years ago. Yeah. I mean, 100 years ago, if you were eating a bird, there's a good chance it was one of two things. It was a spent laying hen because, 2 or 3 years in, it's time to get a new one.
Right.
In which case you made chicken soup out of that.
Yeah.
Or, some low, slow, braised, wet. Or you were eating like a duck or a goose that you went and killed, fresh. Chickens. I mean, we've only been eating chicken as an industry for 75 years tops. Tops. That animal and it's a marvel. I mean, the Cornish cross is a marvel with what we've been able to do with breeding and genetics. It's not a marvel for animal health and I would even say human health.
Yeah.
Again, better than a box of Cheerios.
Right.
But And similarly, Michael, with pork. I mean, we have the all pork 100 years ago. Actually, less further back than that, but 100 years ago, all pork got copious amounts of vitamin D because they were all raised outdoors, right. And again. Humans and pigs, very, very similar. Okay, so we already know what happens when you rob a human of adequate vitamin D levels.
No.
It ain't pretty.
No.
Okay, so I would even make the argument today, the industrial pig, it's not even the same finished product.
Right.
Because it's literally been robbed its entire life of the sun.
Right.
And so, which makes it more susceptible to disease. Pigs are predisposed. They have small lungs for their size. So like the 2 or 3 things that physical curses of a pig are all respiratory. Mm-hmm. And so you crowd them into a crowded house and, turn the air off for far too long. You've got real problems. And so, and that perpetuates, pharmacological intervention at an industrial scale. And so we've really done a number to ruin the pig. But there's hope.
There's always hope, and I think that's one of the reasons. When people say, "Oh, poor," with you mentioned it before, the whole saturated fat. Oh, cholesterol and heart attacks and whatnot. If it's not the pork is not the issue. The fat in the pork is not the issue. It is in modern pork, but not for the reasons that everyone tells you. It's because those animals are raised in a way that are how they're not supposed to be raised. They are sick, really. They're slaughtering sick animals at the end of the day, metabolically unhealthy animals, and you're eating them, right?
Yeah, one of the things you and Anthony talked about on your episode, which I would tell your listeners, if you haven't listened to that one, it's a really good one. I don't agree with Anthony on everything, but he does a great job, and it was good. It was a good interview, though.
Yeah, thank you.
I thought he did a really good job of laying things out. Oh, that's it. I don't agree with him on the pig side of the house versus the chicken because we have a much deeper track record of us and pigs from again, 200 years ago, there was no such thing as a meat chicken.
Right.
100 years ago, there was no such thing as a meat chicken. And so we didn't eat chicken.
Yeah.
We have a much longer history with pigs. And so I agree that, high PUFA or high omega-6 consumption, that was the point that you guys made in your talk was it's not about the ratio as much as it is the level.
That makes a lot of sense. And I agree with that. And, the thing is, pork, tastes really good, get it from a source that raises, the animal well. And then, enjoy it. There is nothing wrong with it as long as just, be aware of where you buy your stuff from, how the animal was raised, what it was fed, what the environment was the animal lived in. And if you do that and you make the right choices, then I don't think there is anything wrong with consuming that and enjoying it. It tastes delicious. It's arguably the most delicious fat is lard. By far.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Lard spread. Lard spread was almost as more popular than butter at one point.
My grandparents, they had this, dish of lard, just scooped it out and ate it. That was,
and it keeps longer. And it keeps longer. It's got, because lard is really more of a pure fat, with butter, you've got all those milk solids in there, which are absolutely delicious. But, lard is more akin to like a ghee where you've cooked all that other stuff out. But man, oh gosh, read any like homesteader book from 100 years ago, and it's like lard. It was the fat of choice. For a lot of situations, and so that's why I'm here, is to just let people know it's still there. You got to source it, and hopefully again, it's companies like Farrow, and we're unique right now. We're the only lard-based sort of skincare company, but I'd like to see more healthy, happy. We call it smart lard,
right?
So we've trademarked that because I don't, not all lards are created equal. You do need to raise a healthy, happy pig, which is beautiful, right? that's the real joy that comes from this, is knowing that with our product and with people consuming pasture-based lard, that means there's a pig out there that had a really awesome life,
right?
And helped heal the land, and had one bad day, and of which that we are eternally grateful and thankful.
Yeah, makes sense. Where can people find you? Where can they find your skincare product, follow you, see what's going on, what you're up to?
Yeah, so the Instagram is probably the best place to keep up with us. That is Farrow Skin is our @Farrow Skin, Farrow. The website is farrow.life.
Okay.
And if you sign up, when you go to there's a flash page. If you sign up for our email list, we send you a 15% off coupon right away as a thank you. But yeah, farrow.life, FARROW .LIFE is our website. That's where you order it. We don't sell in stores or other places. And we make every batch as fresh as possible and ship it out the door. So
awesome.
Yeah,
well, I'm
that's
looking
it.
forward to trying it out once my char arrives. Thanks so much, Charles, for spending the time with me. And I hope I'll have you again soon on the podcast to talk more about pigs, pork, and lard.
Well, we're gonna get you porked up here, either here or the new property for sure. And thank you for inviting me here. You have a beautiful home, and
thank you.
It's great to see it. And I got the nickel tour before we hopped on here, so it was great to see all your farming.
All right, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Cheers.